Cartel Coaching. We know there's a lot of options when it comes to triathlon content and coaching content in general, so we're really glad you're here. Our mission is to make triathlon more accessible and help break down the barriers to entry in a sport we care so much about. I'm Em, the age grouper, and I'm joined by Tim, our elite coach, and Cal, our ex-pro. Between the three of us, you're getting three really different perspectives on the sport, from learning and figuring it out in real time, to elite coaching insights, and to years of race experience at that top end. We're here to share useful tips, practical advice, and our own experiences to help make triathlon feel a little less overwhelming and a whole lot more doable. Now let's get into today's episode.
Anyway, let's fuel.
So welcome back to Cartel Coaching. Today we're talking all things fueling, and following on from our first episode, I think this is a good place to be because it's somewhere that I guess is that real quiet limiter for age groupers where, you know, we think we're doing the right things and sometimes we're really just not. So I know personally from my experience, it's been quite a tough road for me as someone who's been on quite a significant weight loss journey and then has had to move into the performance fueling space. So it's a topic I'm really keen to discuss with you, Tim, and also Cal, to get your perspective, get the pro perspective and what it was actually like for you.
Yeah, I mean, fueling has become probably the biggest catchphrase really in the last 5 years in endurance sport. And I think we've seen, especially in races, race fueling accelerate the race speed, in the pro peloton, and also certainly in triathlon times, it's having a huge impact across the board. And what we're also seeing though is, I think, a bigger realization that the old lettuce diet didn't quite cut it for triathletes and endurance runners, and living off a lettuce diet for a while certainly came back to bite you in the bum at some point further on. And there's been a huge amount of progress in this space, and the space isn't progressing, I think, just in terms of fueling, but I think people realizing the psychological impacts that are driving some of our fueling decisions and vice versa, and how they've driven things in the past, and often they're so closely linked, and also the stereotypes in the sports, endurance sports especially, are so closely linked that that people have had to try and get over that part of it and change that view that also a ripped six-pack doesn't actually mean that you're fit. Just means you're probably surviving off a minimal diet and can't put the pedals down as well. I mean, Cal has lived this from back in our day, Cal, when we were 2008, 2009. She was a different old beast to what it is now.
Yeah, it sure was. But yeah, it's a touchy subject as well, and it's a tough topic to address. And as Em said, we're not dietitians, and there's people out there that are a bit averse and offering advice. And I think the cool thing, just like technology, is everything's evolving as well with new studies and literature. So I think what worked back then might not necessarily work now. But at the end of the day, one thing that's common is everyone is unique as well. So, you might be able to down a fillet of salmon on the bike, and someone else might just have to, someone might be able to take 90 or 120 grams of carbs. And then there's all different theories as well on how to prepare your stomach and your body for an event, and even in the days leading up to it. So yeah, I think the best thing is don't try anything new on race day, trial and error, during your build up to events as well. But yeah, it's a can of worms, and I guess we'll dive into it today on today's chat.
Yeah. As someone who's totally new to endurance sports, so I'm a couple of years in now, and someone who's been on that massive weight loss journey, it's been such a learning curve for me. So I had a look back at my first picture of me in a tri suit the other day, and I was just shook. It was almost a little bit triggering for me. I was so skinny. And I know how much I weighed then. I was about 67 kilos and I'm 174 centimeters tall. So I was pretty thin for my standards. Absolutely zero muscle. And now I run I'm probably about 7 or 8 kilos heavier. I've stopped weighing in. It's not beneficial for me anymore, but I can definitely tell the difference. And I think my first ever marathon, I fueled that marathon with 500 liters 500 milliliters of
500
sugar-free.
liters, that'd have been a
Not
good
liters,
nudge.
not liters, milliliters. So like the Nerd Belt that's got like the 2 smallest drink bottles, right? So I filled that
Yeah.
with Gatorade Zero, so it had no calories in it, and I think I had 1 gel for my entire marathon because I just had absolutely no idea, and I was cooked, totally cooked. So I look back at poor old Emma who started this thing to where I am now and just think, Jesus, like it's tough, but it was all driven by me being in that weight loss mind. I could not let go of that 67 kilo number. I felt like if I let go of that number, I'd lose control. It was tough.
Yeah, I mean, Pete Fitzinger, who Callum also knows well, Callum's ex-coach, I interviewed him the other day, and he was telling me that their marathons back in the 80s, they would probably fuel actually about the same as that, and that's how far we've come. So, they might have some electrolytes during the run, and they might pick up, a little bit of honey water or, a banana if they were lucky during a marathon. And these guys are running 209 marathons and no super shoes with no fuel. So it's pretty outstanding to see from a performance perspective where we're coming. And I think that's a really important delineator that you're bringing to the table, is that we're talking about how to perform in an endurance event, not how to survive it, and using nutrition to really support performance, not just in the race, but outside of the race. And they can be two different things to quite a big degree.
Yeah. For me, there's kind of a couple of facets to it. It's like your body weight, your body image is sort of one, and then the second is probably fueling for race day. And I think, I mean, we've all seen athletes that are absolutely shredded, but it doesn't necessarily translate to performance, and vice versa. Now, there's athletes who don't look the stereotypical shape who are just crushing it, which is awesome to see too, because I think a lot of people generally associate super skinny with high performance. So yeah, at the end of the day, I feel like your body will find the perfect weight. If you're training and doing the hours, then your body will sort of naturally get into, where it needs to be. And then I guess it's whether or not you define success as, hitting a certain weight on the scales, or hitting a certain time in the event as well. So how would you sort of summarize that, Tim? I know it's sort of 2 areas as well, how your body image looks, and then another one, how you sort of feel for race day. Do you reckon it's something we need to address separately, with 2 topics there?
I mean, yeah, race fueling is definitely a different topic, and it requires a significant amount of more fuel than what you're going to put in throughout your training sessions. And generally because the intensity is often different, and you're trying to fuel to a high level of performance. Whereas your training day, you're trying to not only fuel for that day, but you're trying to fuel for the subsequent day and the subsequent day after that. Because we want to be physiologically prepared to turn up every day and have stable power, have really good pace control, be able to execute the sessions backing up every day. And that's really, really important. And part of that as well is a significant different diet with the amount of protein we've got to spread throughout the day as well. That we need to be able to get somewhere between 1.6 and 2.2 grams of protein in per kg of body weight per day. It's a significant amount to spread throughout the day. I'm 75 kg male, thinking I'm probably going to need over 100 plus grams of protein throughout the day. How do I actually get that on board and spread that throughout the day? And I'm not going to take that much protein on for a race. And it's a really tough thing to do, and we've got to find ways to do it, especially for a lot of us in the age group world. We were trying to do that around our work schedules, which is pretty significant, and crush that in. And but what we should see and what we should experience through doing that is training and being fatigued shouldn't be this badge. I feel like some people, when we got to the stage where it's like this badge of success, like, oh, I'm tired all the time, and I've been training really hard, so I'm tired and I'm worn out. But a lot of the reality there is you're not actually adapting to the training stress you're applying, and you shouldn't be in that state all the time. And you're either training too hard or you're not fueling it properly if you are in those states. And through that, you're going to see some real instabilities in your immune function, your mood, your sleep quality, and your hormones, and also your glycogen availability. And all of that's going to really have a hammering effect negatively on your training on the day-to-day basis, because we're really, through anything, we're looking for a real stable platform to operate off. So we want stable glycogen availability, we want hormonal stability, we don't want to have cravings later in the day, we don't want to have post-session collapses, we want our mood to be nice and stable. And often I think we don't get that, because we feel like, because we're training hard, we should be in the state of fatigue all the time, which actually isn't appropriate. Em, I mean, you've been across both areas here. How have you been able to transition from, weight loss M into performance M from a training status day to day?
Yeah, it's been really hard. So I'd say for the first year of me trying to do endurance sports, particularly the running. Okay, so I started with running and I was chronically injured. And I think it was partly because my body was not ready to start I'd been a couch potato for a decade and then I just started running. And so A, that was a problem, had no muscle, but B, I didn't fuel any of my runs. I didn't understand that I actually had to eat before any sessions. I felt like that was just not a thing. Because in my mind, I'd switched from it's good for me to do all these fasted cardio sessions because that's how I was burning mega weight. I was able to lose 80 kilos in about 15 months. Like that's heaps. And so that was my hack. And to switch my mindset to say, actually, my body needs this fuel before and after and during has been really difficult. And you do start to look at your body a little bit differently. I think particularly with cycling, I've had to really do a lot of mindset work about what my body looks like, because as I said, when I was at my peak weight loss I was very thin and I was like, yeah, I nailed this. But now my legs are bigger. My legs are I've got cycling legs now. And instead of having a feeling about that and not liking that, I have to look at it and say, well, yeah, no, that's actually good. Your body's changing so that you can do these things and you have to keep fueling it like that. But I would definitely say for me, it's something that I have to really think about properly and not get into a doom loop, because it can be challenging, particularly when you are carrying a bit of extra food. Sometimes I'm just not hungry and I don't want to eat, but I feel like I have to, because the risk of I know what happens when I don't eat properly, and it's injury. I'll definitely pull up with an injury.
Yeah. How did you cope with that, mate? I mean, if you're training 30 hours a week, to actually eat enough, you feel like you should just be sitting down at a buffet from probably 8 till 5 and making that your second job.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we coming from high performance sport, I feel like there was always pressure on us to be skinny, and we're doing it 25, 27 hours a week, and we're still trying to lose weight, which is arguably unhealthy. So you're still trying to run it at a deficit, and again at that pointy end, you're trying to lose like 1 to 2 kilos, which it's difficult. So I feel like, yeah, myself and a lot of the other athletes, everyone is under fueling. Obviously, you're fueling up for key sessions because you need glycogen and you need to be able to put out the power and the speed, and likewise for events. But week to week maintenance and training, there's a lot of the time where, I would say it wasn't the healthiest lifestyle, because you are trying to get in shape. And again, weird sports scientists and whatnot saying, hey, such and such is like this, you need to be like this. And so yeah, that's probably coming from a different obviously a different angle and it's not as common, but I'd say that sort of perspective still overlaps a lot into age group racing where people, they just want to be skinnier because they think it goes faster. But I've seen a ton of people who are skinny walking the run, so it doesn't always translate. So it's difficult. And even I think now, I think it's worth for a lot of people just have a chat to a dietitian, nutritionalist, figure out what your goals are you're trying to achieve and how to fuel that as well. Because I mean, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do during training is tick little goals, tick different, powers, run speeds, and that kind of stuff. And you need to be fueled to hit those because that's going to in turn build your confidence. You want to go into an event with your tail up, feeling confident. If you're getting injured, like Em said, and you're missing these sessions and you're not being able to achieve a certain power on the bike, it's going to crush you mentally as well. So it's trying to find that sort of happy equilibrium of your body weight and your mental state.
And I think you hit on nail on the head there. Like a dietitian and working with them is so key because there will be athletes come into the sport who are carrying a lot of extra weight and have been in Emma's position before, and what they can do is they can work with you on just that slow reduction through time and being in the sport and making sure you can find the balance so that we're not seeing these chronic crashes where you're removing huge percentage of calories day by day and then getting this position where you're actually not even able to perform the exercise, which is going to help with the performance and also with the weight loss as well. So dietitians are really key, and then there also can be the mental side, and we can't shy away from that. I know people are often scared to talk about it, but we need to talk about it more, and that's a real common issue. And Callum, you experienced high performance sport. There's, especially back in the day, a lot of pressure and around weight, and that can drive a lot of anxiety for people. And also the body image complex a lot of people will carry and have there because it comes along with the sport as well. And how you can actually overcome that is working on the self-confidence within yourself and your self-belief, to believe that it's okay and understand that it's okay as well. And it's really cool that narrative is shifting, but I think we still do need to really recognize the role psychologists play in food and sport.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one, and I think no matter what level you're at, people are probably living parallel lives where are facing similar challenges, and it's good to have that conversation. The mental side of it is huge as well. Just, at the end of the day, like I said before, you need to be fueling so you can hit these sessions. And so you get your confidence up, you feel like you're progressing, you're ticking off goals during your training journey to an event as well. So the last thing you want is to be under fueling to a point where you've got reds or you're getting injured. A lot of females suffer stress fractures when they're running in deficits. So it's like if you're extreme and you want to take it to the limit, just try to make sure that you know the signs where you're starting to get run down and overstepping that mark, because the last thing you want is 6 months out with a stress fracture and that kind of stuff. And it's super common in our sport as well. Last thing you want to be doing is heading into a race doing water running or treadmill running or on like a recumbent bike because you can't do anything. So
Yeah.
it's better to get to an event slightly underdone than it is not get there at all.
Yeah, that was such a learning for me. I never thought that I needed coaching because I thought coaching was about someone motivating you. And I thought I'm one of the most motivated individuals I know, so I don't need anybody to do that for me. But that was, I guess, my biggest learning was all of that, right? When I got my stress fracture, so I got a stress fracture before my first 70.3 where I was self-coached, and I ended up doing the 70.3 with the stress fracture and then turned it into a proper break by doing that event on the leg, which then turned into DVT, and it was quite a situation. And it tapped me out for a good 6 months, and it took me ages to get my running back in any sort of shape. And yeah, my learning was not just about food, but that was a big piece of it, because I think still I was kind of on that calorie counting bandwagon, but part of it also was that kind of Goggins mentality that you do have to kind of suffer through this sport and you have to do these insane hours. And I know part of what I was doing was I had sort of my scheduled training, and then I'd go and do things with a friend. And it was kind of outside of what I was doing with my training, but I didn't even understand the compounding impact of some of those things that I was doing. I am interested kind of in the flip side though. So we talk about fueling for performance, right? And I want to give you, Tim, I want to give you a real scenario from my last race in Taupo. So I was racing for fun. I've had a pretty stressful period in my life. And so I actually took all of the pressure off myself in that race. And I just was like, I'm going to enjoy the scenery. I'm just going to have a good time. And so what ended up happening was I actually didn't feel like I needed a lot of fuel for that race. And I came over the finish line. So I didn't actually use much of my fuel. I felt pretty steady on the bike. And then I ran at a really comfortable pace and I walked the aid stations where I wanted to and had a drink. But I actually didn't end up taking a lot of my fuel. I probably had half of what I was anticipating I would have. So I guess my question there is I got over the finish line feeling pretty good. And it didn't really impact me. And do you think that there are some people who, I guess, are not at the pointy end and are not necessarily in that performance arena, but are maybe over fueling based on some of the things that they're hearing around the amount that you need to fuel and kind of like making themselves sick?
It's definitely a thing. And, when you hear stories of Worth who's doing 200 grams of carbs an hour on the bike, so, he's taken out, sounds like a Cam Brown strategy of 2 meat pies and a 1.5 litre of Coke to try and fuel it, and then you've got, David Roach who's running through Leadville 100 at 140 grams of carbs an hour through gels alone over a very long distance of run. You start to think, oh, that's what I need to do. But everything's related to intensity. Now, these guys have trained themselves to perform over a large duration of time at a real high percentage of their VO2 max or their threshold, however you want to define it. And to do that, they do have to fuel at a high amount to be able to fuel that intensity, because a high intensity is going to burn more carbs. It's just, there's an equation there, the ATP you've got to create. And so you need to do that. Now, the reality, if we took your scenario, for example, you're in cruise mode and enjoying it, you probably weren't burning as many carbs as you might do had you been racing at 85% of your FTP for 90K and running at the bottom end of zone 3 for your 21K. You probably weren't sitting quite there. So you're going to use less. You may have also got by doing that and maybe paid the effects for days 2, 3, 4, or 5 after by not fueling it as well, and then feeling quite tired and not being able to bounce back from the race as well.
So I did get sick. I got sick. I got a flu a couple of days after. I didn't think that they would be linked together, but do you think that I could have been run down because of that?
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It could definitely be a direct link. And part of underfueling is we see immune function collapse. And generally some of the signs we're seeing of people who are underfueling, there's repeated stress injuries, repeated niggles, repeated sickness, repeated inability to get up and train for sessions. And so they can be linked. And sometimes there's those layers of stress coming together, and it may only take you being 10 or 15% off in your fueling, but you've layered on life stress, layered on race stress, travel stress, probably a huge amount of social stress as well there, interacting with lots of different people, and it's full on, and it all takes its toll, right? And so it only has to be, that one thing fall further out of line, it can have an impact on you. And that definitely could have been the case there.
From our last episode, I was thinking about this, and it was more about it's sort of the quality over quantity question. So I think it can be really difficult, and I think for someone like myself who's got a slightly smaller stomach, and for a lot of women who can't eat big amounts. Like if I look at some of the people, you know, in my circles, you know, particularly men who do the endurance training, you see them after like a big bike session and they just smash some massive feed. I just can't do that. That's not, I physically can't do that. And I'd say that there's a lot of women who also couldn't do something like that. And so sometimes when I think about how I need to fuel my days, I know that I have to leverage some garbage to actually hit the right amount of calories because I just couldn't do it in a clean way. And so I make that decision, but I think sometimes that actually makes me feel bad at the same time, you know, like, so I find that an interesting and a difficult decision that I come up against every day is to think about, do I want to sit at maintenance, or do I want to be eating enough, or do I want to be eating right?
Cal, if I remember correctly, you're a bit of a gummy bear king, weren't you? The old bag of Haribos would be tucked
Yes.
up your sleeve.
So I used to have a saying on Fridays called Fat Boy Friday. Um, so I would just unleash the beast. This is before an event. But it sort of carried over before key sessions too, where it's like, hey, we've got 8x1K fast run, where it's just full gas. It's the best effort you can do. And I was like, we don't want to be doing that on underfueled. So I guess you could do it a healthy option and you know, do your pasta and rice or whatnot. But I would just take the approach of let's just jam in as many calories as we can. You're already pretty skinny as an athlete. But for me, you know, I didn't have a problem eating what you'd call junk food or bad food for that. Like I was like, all bets are off. The key here is to put out a good session and have the fuel to get through a hard session. Um, so yeah, that sort of probably comes down to your personality type. If you can release the reins a little bit and just chill out. And I always take the approach as well during like a long bike ride. If you're doing a 5-hour ride, if you stop halfway through that, and you want to have a bag of chips, have a bag of chips. If you want to have a Moro bar, Skittles, whatever. I mean, I've been on long rides, key sessions with Rennie and Crowe, in Boulder, Colorado, where literally, you know, Rennie would have a bag of chips or a donut, and I'm like, if it's good enough for her, it's good enough for me. So I was like, we don't need to over-engineer this. And sure, you can take a healthy approach. I'm sure someone like Jan Frodeno, who is, you know, shredded, probably has a healthier option for that. But again, I think you figure out your personality type and you figure out yourself, and then you just start to support that, in terms of your eating and decision making as well. Because the last thing you want to do is be beating yourself up the whole time because you've blown out and had a bag of Oreos.
Do love a bag of Oreos. But yeah, I agree with you,
Yeah.
Cal, and I think it can be really difficult in busy lives to get enough calories in eating healthily.
Mm.
You know, it's really hard, and the volume sometimes you have to take on board to be able to do that, to your point, Emma, is really difficult as well. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of pieces of broccoli to fit in your gut to get, and when you've got a small
Yeah.
stomach and you can't fit that in, it's going to be really, really tough. And so if you can start to shift your mindset a little bit and give yourself flexibility on days which are critical to your performance or to what you want to achieve out of the sport, then it's going to be really healthy just to start to dive into a few Snickers bars and, a good big donut out in Kenilworth. And
Yeah, I don't know anyone that finds it super easy and like it comes natural. Like it's an area that requires discipline, just like going to bed early, just like getting through your training. The nutrition and the fueling is one aspect as well where, look, if you blow out, and we've all blown out, just start afresh tomorrow or start afresh this afternoon. Like it's okay just to reset and let it go. And I mean, sometimes you might be going out for dinner with friends and that kind of stuff. Just enjoy it. It's not,
mm,
it's whatever your patterns are that you're creating, your habits that you're creating. If you can get the fuel in and be healthy and try and minimize the garbage, there's a time and a place for all of that kind of stuff. And whatever you create, what situation you create for yourself, it just needs to be sustainable and that goes for fueling during sessions as well. So you don't want to be bonking, but you also don't want to be creating yourself, like GI stress and that.
Hmm. I think a lot of people are probably unaware that they're underfueling as well. I'd say particularly a lot of women are probably unaware of how much they need to eat to actually do this sort of thing. I know for myself, actually doing the numbers as someone who completely dialed in on calories and, was calculating to the calorie, now looking at what I actually have to eat just on a regular day, like even just, random today, it's actually a lot. So and Tim, you probably see it, quite regularly, but I'd say that probably majority of women are probably underfueling when it comes to this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think I feel it's probably women, yeah, definitely. They tend to eat smaller portions and can't smash out as big a stuff as men, but reds in sport is nearly as common in men as it is in women.
Okay.
And I believe, what happens with men in sport though is we don't have a menstrual cycle that helps us identify some of that.
Mm.
Which helps show that hormones are changing, but it actually is super common because body image is nearly just as important to them. But as you say, and some of it is actually just not having the knowledge of being able to eat and fuel enough. And so we are 10% or 20% behind every day because we don't recognize how big our plate needs to be and how much needs to be on it. In that we are burning a huge amount of calories. So yeah, it's really common across the board. It's the biggest mistake I see day to day. A lot of green boxes on people's training peaks. Fantastic. Beautiful. People going and getting massages, people tweaking their bikes to look sharp, the aero, etc. But actually fueling and then sleep are the two biggest things that people aren't doing properly. And it's having the biggest effect on performance, way more than your aero gains.
And how do you pick it up,
Yeah.
Tim? Like, can you see it coming? Like, if you're just sort of perusing training peaks?
Yeah, it's pretty hard, and you may not pick it up within a couple of weeks, but you start to see trends of people not being able to back up, and you think, okay, well, I need to start to back this down for people, or they're not able to hit these sessions back to back. So you start to spread the sessions out, and then they're still not hitting the numbers, and you're like, oh, there's definitely something more going on here. Or you start to get I'm just feeling flat, my legs had nothing again, I'm tired, but I'm really wired. I'm crashing in the afternoon. So those are sort of things in the comments that I'm looking for to hear from people. And then you start to see the things around poor sleep and irritability and those parts which come into the equation. So we can pick it up. We won't pick it up straight away without those comments, but we will pick it up through the training data because training becomes too difficult, and we have to restructure.
On the topic of sleep there, I feel like that is just a key element in a lot of this as well. Like if you can get the sleep, not only does it help you through recovery, but I think just in your decision making and your clarity, staying up late. I mean, everyone's probably done this. I certainly have, where you start to eat garbage. And you might all of a sudden not get up for your early morning swim session or your run session or your bike session, and then sort of has that flow-on effect. The first thing you want to do when you get up is have some wins. So hopefully you start to get into a routine where you wake up happy, you're ready to roll for swimming, and you start fueling for that. You tick the box, you've got a win, you got something under your belt already for the day, and then hopefully that flows on. You come home, you have a healthy breakfast, and you're getting fueled up for work, and that sort of will help if you've got a post-work session that day. So just trying to tick these little goals and little stepping stones throughout the day as well. Like you can sort of break it down. The last thing you want to be doing is finishing work at 5 o'clock. You've still got a 30-minute run and you've got no energy to get through it as well. So just figuring out what that may be. And a lot of the time, if you chat to your coach or chat to your dietitian and figure out what you need to get through the day in those sessions, again, like we spoke previously, you want to keep stacking these little wins up each week, each day, and all of a sudden you'll start hitting your goals.
That's nice, Cal. Love it, mate. I think that's training down to a T, right? It's stackable. We need to layer
Yep.
things on over and over again. And I think that's a great way to wrap up today. Like, one thing people can take away from this is stacking wins, and stacking small wins on a daily basis will lead you getting what you would like to get out of the sport.
Yep.
Well, that's a wrap. But if you want to keep the conversation going, come find us on Instagram at cartel.coaching. And for coaching camps and communities, you can check out our school page. It's linked in the show notes. See you next time.